All right, so we know that, or we can at least infer today from the Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles press conference, Kevin Warren's going to have a pretty heavy hand in this process. I think the more cynical of us probably thinks that it's ultimately going to be his decision. That's kind of where I've landed on it. So I want to ask.
So you think this is Kevin Warren's decision
I think
ultimately?
If it's like split up on a pie, I'm going to say it's probably ends up being 60-40 Kevin Warren.
Okay, so like I asked the question earlier, if Ryan Poles comes to the conclusion Ben Johnson's his guy, and Kevin Warren comes to the conclusion that Liam Cohen is his guy, or who do they hire?
Marcus Freeman.
Or Marcus Freeman.
Yeah,
better choice.
I think they end up siding with Kevin Warren in that instance.
Really? At that point, Ryan Poles has to say, you know what, thank you for the opportunity, but this place isn't for me any longer.
Boy.
I mean, that would be...
It's a really hard spot.
I get it. There's only 32 of them, but at the end of the day, if you can't hire your own guy, what good is holding that job as general manager? You're not really truly as good, you're not a general manager. You're a partial manager.
You know what? The one thing I'll say is, like we always say, it's only 32 of these. Each one, though, is their own unique job.
True.
And we don't know the symmetry with all of them. There's always some, for instance, I don't like who's, in Dallas, that Jerry Jones is the overseer of everything, including the draft, right? And it has been since he's parted ways with Jimmy Johnson. There's other owners across the league who are a little more hands-on, right?
The only thing I would say to undermine my own emphatic point is, even if Ryan Poles is not given the autonomy that he thought he was signing up for when they hired him, and he was hired before Kevin Warren was, he may have the intense desire to see this through.
Yes.
Because Caleb Williams,
I think that
is the quarterback.
That's what I get back to, is I would have, even if it was Kevin Warren wants his guy, and if you're Ryan Poles and you want your guy, but ultimately Kevin Warren is higher in the pecking order, then if you still are the ones making the picks in the selection process, it's hard to divorce yourself from that. You'd have to really be disenchanted with the working environment if you were Ryan Poles to resign your position.
So off of that, what do you think the Bears are more likely to get right, the coach or the stadium?
Interesting. Wow.
That is a great question.
Wow.
John.
I think getting it right regarding the stadium is being in Arlington Heights. I don't think the Bears believe that is the case. So based on my own position, I think they're more likely to get the head coach.
I like
correct.
how you're connecting the dots.
But that's again the way I view it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I prefer Arlington Heights. That's just me. I'm with you. I will believe both when I see it. I'm sorry. That's just the callous, stance that I've been forced to have. But I will say coach. What would you say, Charlie?
I think I would still say coach, because their definition of a successful stadium operation is going to vary from, whatever their vision is. If they get I would be shocked if they're able to pull off 90% of what they really want to do, as you call it, if they want to build their own paradise.
Maybe, but you know what else? I do think I think they're going to end up building a state-of-the-art stadium, wherever it happens to be.
Frankly, I think it's more likely that they luck into a coach than they luck into building the right, a really stadium the way they want to do it.
There's a lot more that goes into the stadium than the coach.
I trust Kevin Warren to build the stadium better than I do him to hire the next great head coach.
The building in Minneapolis, I've never been in it, has nothing but positive things being said about it.
State of the art, and still believed, it's still held up as one of the best in the league. Tough one, Charlie.
All right. Well, speaking of potentially getting the coaching hiring right, Connor Orr was on the Athletic Football Show a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about, what jobs could come open, and the Browns and Broncos play tonight. He mentioned that if the Browns decide to move on from Kevin Stefanski, he would be right away probably one of the first coaches hired. He's a 2-time coach of the year. He's been to the playoff. He won a playoff game.
Coach as the offensive coordinator with the Vikings, correct?
Correct. He was the offensive coordinator with the Vikings. if you're in that position, but you do know, like, hey, for the best of our franchise, we probably do need a fresh start. They're probably incentivized to trade him. So, would you be open to trading actual draft currency to go get somebody like Kevin Stefanski, possibly even a first round pick, if that's what it took?
So when you say someone like Stefanski,
Kevin Stefanski, I should say.
Okay, because I was going to say Stefanski, not so much. I like what he's done, but I'm not sold on him necessarily being a guy who you need to trade draft assets for, like I am with someone like Kyle Shanahan, if that were the case in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm more inclined for the same.
Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson are more appealing to me than Kevin Stefanski, and actually trading stuff for Stefanski personally. Cliff Kingsbury, I'm even open to the idea of that. Which I know his name was floated over the weekend as well as a possible a guy who the Bears may be interested in, Ian Rappaport.
Is this a fair comparison? And he's a two-time Coach of the Year. Is Stefanski and Matt Nagy kind of comparable?
I don't think so.
Both of them had... in his first year, Stefanski was 11-5. They were third in the AFC, but they made it in as a wild card. They won a playoff game. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC divisional game. Then he was basically 500, 8-9, 7-10, and then last year they were 11-6, and they lost in their first
with the Joe
playoff game with Joe Flacco to the Texans.
That...
So, as in his career with them 3-8 now, he's 40-38. He's got a 1-2 postseason record.
That's interesting.
Is he Matt Nagy?
I think he's had a much more tangible success offensively. Like I'm trying to see just off the top of my head if this is just total DVOA or if it's just offense, but they're consistently ranking top 10 to 15 since he's been there and you consider the fact that
offensively.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out. But
I mean, they've had a really good defense in like recent years, right?
I mean, Deshaun Watson was pretty awful.
And by the way,
years.
Joe Flacco went on a heater of all heaters, didn't he?
Yes.
But he has to play some part of that, right, Kevin Stefanski?
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to talk.
He's done with multiple quarterbacks too.
I'm agreeing with Meller. If I'm getting rid of draft pick compensation or trading it, especially a first rounder, the bar is higher than Kevin Stefanski. With all due respect to his Coach of the Year awards,
especially when guys like Vrabel and Ben Johnson are out there and potentially available without having to give up any draft assets. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not trading for Kevin Stefanski personally.
You wouldn't have to trade for someone who's not a head coach, right? That's only
correct.
They
can block it they can block it if you're hiring him for the same position,
right?
But
you can't hire him for the same position. I don't believe.
No,
correct, because the other team can block.
You got one more for us there, Charlie?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess just in general, I'm curious because I'm not sold that the Bears are just automatically going to have their pick of the litter and that teams are going to line up just because Caleb Williams is there. So, like, if you are Kevin Warren, if you are Ryan Poles, right now the case to be made for if you're trying to get Ben Johnson, for example, the case to be made to me is not as ironclad as I think we were all hoping it would be, because you have a very weird organizational structure right now. The offensive line is very much a work in progress. There hasn't been much tangible forward momentum as far as wins and losses go. So, like, besides Caleb Williams,
coach coming in to this situation is not going to have much juice.
Exactly. Other than Caleb Williams. So, like, what is the pitch if you're Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren? You're trying to get the big fish on this coaching cycle.
I think it is that we'll pay your asking price. You get a chance to work with a up and coming excellent young quarterback. They're not going to cede roster decisions to him, I don't believe, especially with a president and a general manager. So I don't know. It's a good question. A lot of guys, if they come in, especially like if Ben Johnson were to consider this job, wouldn't he have questions about the job security, where Ryan Poles is? Like Ryan Poles,
have to.
Right? Ryan Poles next year would be his last year on his deal, right? So,
yeah. The only question is, like, are you somebody? If you're Ben Johnson, and I don't know. I only know what I've read about him, and I know Kalen Keller told us a couple weeks ago how she thought, he would be a very interesting, hire. And if you have
how much input does he want to have on the offensive personnel? Not power on drafting guys, but look, he's had success. These are the types of players I like. This is what I'd hope you'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
listen, and the thing is, if you want Ben Johnson, like the Bears, Saints, and Jets jobs are all open with interim head coaches right now. So theoretically, those are the 3 jobs opening. Looking around the league, though, outside of you add in the Jags, you would
Giants
expect
will be open.
Possibly. Daboll, could go either way.
Really?
I think there's a possibility he goes back. But I did put them with a question mark.
Okay.
He's sacrificial lamb for the GM.
The Raiders, I think, is a possibility that Antonio Pierce gets launched.
I would think so.
But those are potentially 6 gigs. Outside of that, the rest of the jobs, maybe the Browns, based on the Stefanski conversation. But outside of that, so all those teams I listed, the Bears' job, I think, is far and away because of Caleb the best, don't you?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that's if I'm the Bears, that's the pitch. Come here, you get to work with Caleb Williams, and we're going to pay you.
But listen, if the perception is dysfunction, then
usually,
maybe it's not.
That's a lot of dysfunctional
I was
teams
just going to say, all the teams I just
right?
gave you, who's not dysfunctional? That's the problem, is oftentimes the head coaching job, when it becomes available, it's usually an organization that you can point to a lot of different things and say, there's some dysfunction there. Very rarely will you get the case.
Listen, I would think that Caleb is an enormous carrot to dangle in front of any coach.
I suppose the Raiders, if they end up getting the first or second overall pick, you can have your choice of a quarterback. But I think Caleb Williams right now.
Oh, wait, is there a quarterback in college football?
Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward.
There's probably nobody in college football who excites you the way Caleb Williams did in year 1.
Or Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and then you look at the Saints, they're in a complete insane cap hell.
Yeah.
Vegas is probably the cleanest slate other than New York. But even if New York, let's say they fire Daboll, but they want to keep Joe Shane.
The Raiders, they're not dysfunctional in any way, right?
Super buttoned up operation.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. That's the selling point. You have Caleb Williams.
I think it's the most appealing spot.
So I think that's what the Bears have going for them in their favor.
Which is nice.
Yes.